Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CircuitPython Weekly for March 9th, 2020. This is the time of week that all the CircuitPythonistas get together to talk about everything CircuitPython and Python on hardware. CircuitPython is a version of Python that runs on microcontrollers. I'm Katney, and I am sponsored by Adafruit to work on CircuitPython. CircuitPython development is sponsored by Adafruit, so please support them by purchasing hardware from adafruit.com. This meeting normally happens at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on Mondays. Please check the CircuitPython channel on the Adafruit Discord for notices of change and any information about the meeting. This meeting is hosted on the Adafruit Discord, which everyone is welcome to join at adafru.it/discord. The text chat is held in the CircuitPython channel, and the audio chat is held in the CircuitPython voice channel. This meeting is recorded, so be aware if you are participating that your voice is being recorded. If you are in a situation where you don't have a microphone or you would rather not be recorded, you can always choose to be text only, or put all your information into the accompanying notes document. There is a notes doc that goes along with the meeting that has timestamps in it. So if you are more interested in reading up on how the meeting went versus watching or listening to it, you can absolutely do that. The video is posted on YouTube. It is a video of the Discord text chat and the audio, obviously, of the voice chat. And this is also released as podcast on various podcast services. If you find that we are not on your favorite podcast service, let us know. So that covers that. The meeting is held in 5 parts. The first part is community news, which is everything going on in the community with CircuitPython. It is sort of a preview of our newsletter, which comes out every Tuesday. And that, so we do a quick discussion of that sort of thing. The next thing is State of CircuitPython, the libraries, and Blinka, which is a statistical overview of the project by the numbers. It gives us a chance to get a feel for what's going on outside of what it is we're actually doing. And that's split into 3 parts. The next section is Hug Reports. Hug Reports is an opportunity to call people out for doing something good. It is held as a round robin where the person who is running that section will start, and then we'll go down the list alphabetically, loop back around, and give everyone who wants a chance to talk. If you put notes in the document and you are text only or lurking, I will read them off as we go. And and you'd be read off as in alphabetical order, so basically as though you were in the meeting as well. We'll give everybody an opportunity, and then we move on to status updates. Status updates is also held as a round robin. It is a chance to take a couple minutes to talk about what you've done over the last week and talk about what you're going to be doing over the next week until the next meeting. It's an opportunity too for people to give you tips and tricks if you're blocked on something, and just help you out if you have any quick questions. The last section is In the Weeds, which is an opportunity for more long-form discussions. In the Weeds topics sometimes come out of status updates, but also are stuff that just if you know it's going to be a long-form discussion, you could move it to In the Weeds. If you have an In the Weeds topic, please post it to the notes document so we can get right to it when we get to In the Weeds. And if you come up with one during status updates, please be sure to update the In the Weeds section in the notes doc. If there are no In the Weeds topics, we move on and wrap up. But we also don't want to wait for people to come up with topics. So like I said, if you come up with anything, please let us know as soon as you know, and we'll get that added. And that is how this meeting goes. So with that, I will turn it over to Phil with community news.
All right, thank you, Kenny.
You are welcome.
First up, the awesome power of CircuitPython. This is a quote from Arturo, empowering makers to make businesses. So I did a little bit of a write-up. What we're starting to see is people are able to make their hardware, focus on that, and then they get all the things that go along with CircuitPython. I think Deshipu here, who's lurking, sells things on Tindy. Arturo is celebrating 400 sales on Tindy, and also we stock the Serpente, which is a great little CircuitPython board. So in the early days, maybe a decade ago, I saw the same things with Arduino. People were building businesses and more around an ecosystem that they can participate in, and we're seeing a lot of that and more, and even faster with CircuitPython. So that's really cool to see. I'm going to try to do some little mini case studies on that and more. And I let the folks know at Tindy they were really excited by that. The Freedom Wing droning with Chris Young. This was on our show and tell, did a blog post and more. Bill Binko and a bunch of folks came up with a way to use power wheelchairs to control things like an Xbox, but you can also do things like control a drone. Chris put together a video, posted up on the site, also have a newsletter. It's a really interesting application of being able to use open source hardware, feather format open source software, CircuitPython. So check it out. I expect we'll see a lot more projects like this. Bill's doing a little bit of a nationwide tour going around with the Freedom Wing and working with people and their wheelchairs for them to unlock all the other things in their lives that they weren't able to do before. News probably saw this. The Open Hardware Summit is online only. We will be posting up whatever is going on Friday. We have our Discord channel here that we had made in advance. Some of the team members that were going to participate during the summit might be participating in the virtual event. As far as Adafruit is a company, I don't mind sharing all this stuff. Anyone who paid for a ticket, of course, the Open Hardware Summit can keep all that, and then we reimbursed anyone because for any travel that they couldn't get refunded. Looks like New York will have a series of events canceled, at least this week for sure, as things continue to progress. So we're keeping an eye on it. At the end of this, I'll give you a little bit of update about Adafruit as well. Next project, this was from Jay. This is a really good project. Find your way home with a CircuitPython GPS locator, the clue finder. Now that Clue's out and the way we design it and the way it works, you'll probably see a lot of projects like this. This is a really neat one. Jay just posted up the code, all the different pieces, and also I think there was some Discord discussion about this. So it's the end result. Shout out to Jepler and all the folks who've worked on Microlab. We now have a version that works with CircuitPython. That Learn Guide is up. Check it out, and if you like all the things that you can do with mathematics and Python, you'll be able to do NumPy-like commands to process data now. Tomorrow at 6 p.m., we have a virtual thing that we're doing with Microchip. So 6 p.m. Eastern time, we're going to be doing a lot of CircuitPython stuff live. The video link is there. We're going to show IoT projects, machine learning projects, and more. We're doing that with Microchip. This was already a virtual-only event, so good timing for us. And it'll go for maybe about an hour or so. We have a new segment that we started on Ask an Engineer and then also our site. You'll see a lot of different things that will probably have something to do with CircuitPython. The first one does. It's called Eye on NPI. In the component industry, NPI stands for New Product Introduction. So we wanted to demystify what that is. It's usually a big component supplier saying, here's our NPI. And once in a while, there might be some information, but it's usually a data sheet maybe, or it'll be a very short video with just like a triangle spinning around and a very monotone voice saying the new chip 7.7 is better than the chip 7.6. So we want to do something better than that. So this is ESP32S2 from Espressive. We have samples. We're starting to get some work done on it, but the big thing for all of us here is it has USB, so we'll be able to do things like tiny USB, which also gets us to CircuitPython. So we'll be developing that live. You'll probably see it as we get more and do more. And that's our first MPI. We have another one coming up this week. As always, all of these things and more are in the newsletter. You can do pull requests, issues, add us, email us, whatever it is. We get those in each week. This one's a pretty solid one. And then last up, I wanted to give a hug report for everyone who's known us for just a few years, a few months, or even maybe like a decade now. There's a lot going on in New York City in news with COVID-19. Adafruit was built to withstand things like this. We started the company a few blocks away from ground zero as they were rebuilding the towers. We've always started out where we had to try harder, do harder, and we'll be able to take care of our team members. All of our folks here have paid sick time. Thank you everyone for supporting the company. We've been able to build something sturdy over the last decade. Um, we'll see what happens. We're ready for just about anything. For the long timers who know us, Sandy shut us down, and we were able to get through that. We were also able to take care of our team during the entire Lower Manhattan outage. We had just moved from our apartment to one of our floors that we have. We have now 3 factory floors, but we only had one at the time. Very scary, very young company, and we just made this big commitment. So as always, no matter what happens here, you'll see blog posts from us, you'll see updates, and we're transparent inside and out. So you'll get real-time information that's happening right here from New York as things happen. So the only side effect, I might not be able to participate in some meetings if things are getting really crazy because I have to make sure we're taking care of everything here. But so far so good. We're built for virtual, and we'll see everybody during our normal shows during the week, and hopefully here every week as well. And that's the community news.
Thanks, Phil.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. Next up is the state of CircuitPython libraries and Blinka. So this is a statistical overview of the entire project, including the core CircuitPython, the libraries, and our wrapper library Blinka, for single board computers. So first we'll talk about the project overall, and then we will get into a little more detail on each section. So overall, we had 43 pull requests merged from 20 authors, which seems like a pretty high number, which is excellent. There's a few names that I don't recognize, or at least don't recognize as contributors yet to the project, which is Jim Bob Bennett, Mary's 450, I'm not sure has contributed before, Dan Love 99, and M Fife. I believe those are the new names I don't recognize. Thank you to all of our contributors. We had 12 reviewers, which is also excellent and has become pretty much standard fare. So thank you to everyone who's reviewing. Obviously, both of those things are necessary for this project to grow. We had 13 closed issues by 8 people and 17 open by 12 people. So we're net up, but we just released CircuitPython 5.0, and that means that all the people who didn't want to deal with a beta or release candidate have downloaded CircuitPython 5.0, and so we're finding new stuff. So overall, in general, we released CircuitPython 5.0 stable, and that is now out there. Please update all of your projects, run them, and if you do find any issues, let us know. File an issue, let us know on Discord, however it is you feel comfortable, and feel free to let us know if things are working as well. In terms of the libraries, we are continuing to get more new libraries. And I've seen a lot of activity on current issues and current PRs. So thank you to everyone who has recently joined up and has been taking care of that. It's been excellent to see. One of the things we wanted to work on this year was to make sure that we didn't let PRs on the libraries languish, which we were, and that has been decreased significantly recently. So thank you so much for that. And I think that kind of covers where we are overall. So with that, I will hand it over to Scott to talk about the core.
Thank you, Kattni. Okay, for the core, we had 9 pull requests merged from 6 different authors. So thank you to all our authors. Recognize everybody in that list, so I won't read it off. We had 4 reviewers. Thank you to the reviewers as well. And as always, we're looking for reviewers. So if you want to start reviewing for CircuitPython, let us know. We have 9 open pull requests. Most of them are have only been open a few days, but a couple are over 200 days. We should take a look at those. Issue-wise, we had 3 closed issues by 1 person and 7 open by 4 people, so we're net up, which is not surprising given that we just released a new stable version and a lot more people are poking at it. For a total of 257 open issues. You can go and check those out at github.com/adafruit/circuitpython/issues. We have 2 issues not assigned a milestone. Everything else looks pretty hunky-dory. And we have 8 active milestones, 2 of which we should actually close, both for XX, because we are now stable in 5, and also a 5.0.0, which was issues we needed to fix before 5.0 is out. So making lots of progress. And we also have, I don't think, I bet the core download stats is not.
I don't think it's working.
Not working still. But I meant to look at that as well. Anyway, 5.0 is out and lots of people are checking it out. So lots of good stuff happening. And that's it for the core.
Thanks, Scott.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next up is the libraries. So this is across all libraries involved with CircuitPython. So all 230 or something to that effect at the moment. We had 34 pull requests merged from 16 authors, including all of the names I read off earlier and a bunch of people who have been contributing for a bit. So thank you very much to everyone who's contributed previously and everyone who is new. And we had 11 reviewers, which is still amazing. As Scott said, reviewing is a great way to get started with CircuitPython. If you are unfamiliar with Git and GitHub, that's not a problem. We have a guide for that. And also we are available to help you get started. So reviewing can be as simple as taking a look at the code and posting that it looks good to you. If you have something to test it, you can test it. If you don't, note that and just take a look at the code and see whether syntactically it looks accurate and so on, and let us know that that's what you did. It's a really important part. We can't merge PRs without reviews, and so reviewing is not only a great way for you to get started, it's a very important part of the project for us. So if you're interested in that, let us know, and we can help you get started with that. We had, like I said, 34 pull requests merged. One of them was 324 days old, which is excellent. The rest were 6 days or less, which is also excellent. We had 10 issues closed by 7 people and 10 opened by 9 people. So we are net neutral there with 154 open issues. And currently we have 35 open pull requests, the oldest of which is 427 days old. And again, this is on the list of things we need to look at, is to try and take care of those older PRs and see whether they're still relevant and what we need to do with them. If you want to take a look at all of this information, it's available on circuitpython.org/contributing. There is a list of open PRs, a list of open issues, and a list of library infrastructure issues, which are us attempting to keep our libraries to a standard across the board. And when that standard is not met, libraries will show up on that list. And then we had no new libraries in the last 7 days. We had a number of updated libraries, which I will not read off. And that's where we are with the libraries. With that, I will turn it over to Melissa to talk about Blinka.
Hello. So let me get to the right place in the guide. So I'm going to talk about Blinka, which is our CircuitPython compatibility layer for single board computers. This week we had 0 pull requests merged by no authors and no reviewers. Now there's a net of 0 open pull requests now. There were 2 closed issues by 2 people and 4 open by 4 people, for leaving 36 open issues. There were 2,846 PyPI downloads in the last week, and we currently have 38 supported boards. And that's it.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
And that is the state of CircuitPython, the libraries, and Blinka. Next up is Hug Reports. Hug Reports is an opportunity to call out people for doing something good. If you worked on something with someone, or you saw someone in the community doing something excellent, all of these are perfect Hug Reports. This section is held as a round robin, where I will start, and then as an example, and then I will go down the list alphabetically and loop back to the top and start again. If you are lurking, hopefully you let us know that. If you are text only, also let us know that, and I will read off your Hug report. And then if you're missing the meeting, or you know you're going to miss the meeting and you want to have a hug report read off, you can always add that to the notes document at any time during the week, and it will be read off in order. So I will go through the list and read off anyone who has notes, etc. And that's how this will work. So I will get started. Taking time codes. So I want to give a hug report to Jeff for a lovely chat last week, to Dan for releasing CircuitPython 5.0 stable, to everyone internally and in the community involved with getting 5.0 out the door. That was obviously not a single effort there. All of us here and everyone who's tested it, everyone who reported bugs, everyone who used it on their project and said that it worked, everyone involved, thank you so much for helping us get to this point. I want to give a hug report to Adafruit for their preparation and handling of the current situation regarding events being canceled and how they are handling things internally and in terms of those of us that work remotely. It's just been very well done. They've been very open about it, and it's greatly appreciated. I want to give a hug report to Summersoft for all the patches to the libraries, for Pylint updating and other things, and also for fighting with a patch. We want to update the code of conduct across the board. We added one thing to it on Discord and wanted that to be set up across the board, and apparently it's turning out to be a bit of a beast. To Foamy Guy for continuing to keep up with PRs and issues on the libraries. To Andrew Tribble for continuing to provide assistance in the Help with CircuitPython channel on Discord. And both to Foamy Guy and Andrew Tribble for interest in helping me with PyCon preparation. I keep coming up with ideas and they keep being on board. So thank you very much to both of you. I have KGW listed as still lurking, I think. And so that means we go to Maker Melissa.
Hello, I wanted to give a hug report to Sven Janssen for pointing out a solution for getting the capacitive touch working correctly on rotated on the Raspberry Pi Buster, because we were having issues for quite a while here. And I got that fixed in today. A hug to Geek Guy for finding a potential issue with 14 segment bitmass, and PT for all the quick updates regarding upcoming event statuses and changes.
Excellent. Next up is Marius 450. I can't hear you. Can anyone else hear them?
No, I cannot.
Okay. Oh no, no worries. Do you want me to read it off? All right. So Marius 450 has a collective hug for version 5.0. A couple lurking, and then Summersoft has notes, but it's text only. Summersoft says, hug report to Katney for the late weekend reviews and merges, to Tan Newt for starting to work on sleep, and a group hug. And Stargirl, who is missing the meeting, says, group hug to all. And next up is Scott.
Hello. First off, a hug report to Dan for both releasing 5.0 and simply all the work that Dan did to make 5.0 happen. Really took it to the finish line, so I really appreciate that. Hugs to Katney, DeHirata, Summersoft, and Sedacious for all the work on Black and Lint. It's really cool to see that going. Hug report to AT Makers Bill, who was starting to bring up this idea of powering a feather off of solar, which is really neat. I've been in low power land, so that got my brain thinking. So both a hug report and a thank you for getting me into this, Bill. Hopefully we'll be able to get the power low enough that even in Seattle we could have a sensor be powered by solar. And lastly, thank you to Carter for taking it upon himself to add 2 more properties to the design guide. We have started adding them, but haven't actually documented them in the design guide as we should have. So thank you to Carter for taking that on. And that's it for me.
All right, thanks. Next up is Andrew Tribble.
Yep, just a group hug to all this week.
Excellent. All right, and now I have notes from Anecdata, who is lurking, and says, hug report to Brent Rue for his work on WizNet 5K and for his ongoing work connecting our devices to the world. And I have a couple of lurkers, and Seagrover is learning, which is lurking while learning. And that gets us to Dan.
Hi, hi everybody. So I have a longer list today. Thanks to Jeff for working on integrating Microlab or ULab or whatever you want to call it into CircuitPython, and working with the developer to improve it in a number of ways. That was really great, and he's continuing to work on it, which is really great. And thanks to the original author, V923Z, for this. ULab is a really hugely significant addition to MicroPython and CircuitPython in terms of what it can be used for in so many ways to do numerical computation, adding good numerical computation to these to MicroPython and CircuitPython. I'd like to congratulate Stargirl at Thea Codes on her Winterbloom synthesizer, which is in production and works, uses CircuitPython, and seems to be a really wonderful piece of hardware. Looks really great. I'd like to thank Kevin Walters for continuing to find significant bugs. He's always trying new things with CircuitPython, and he finds interesting bugs that we do need to fix. That's very helpful. TG Techie found a very obscure but important bug in terms of how objects were created on import and whether they got copied or not, and we'll need to fix that in the long run. I'd like to thank Marius450, who spent a long time, I don't know if it was a long time, who spent time greatly improving the Turtle library, making it faster, adding more capability, and even still having it use less memory, which is really great. So that's a really helpful, especially in the educational environment. And I'd like to thank Kattni, who is working on a lot of things for PyCon, which may or may not happen in some form. And but she knows we have to do something. We have to act as if it's going to happen in some form, and she's working hard on that to produce something that will be useful either in person or virtually. We'll see. Okay.
All right, thanks Dan. So I have a quick hug report from someone not in the meeting, Devo, who just said group hug for 5.0. I have notes from D. Gloud, who is missing the meeting, who said Dan H. for the 5.0 release work and its BLE content, and to Foamy Guy for the collaboration on the BLE patchwork demo. I also have notes for Dewester, who is also lurking, who said group hug to all on the release of 5.0. And next up is Foamy Guy.
All right, I got for this week, big thanks to David Gloud. He has helped make the existing patchwork demo a lot more efficient. I was doing it in a kind of rudimentary way, and I learned a lot from the way he did it. So it's a lot better now. Really appreciate his help on that. Scott and Carter, early on in the week, they were working with the BLE radio, which is something I had my eye on a little while back. So I was excited to see movement there, and I found an example that one or both of them made. So big thanks there. Arturo on Tindy has some BlackBerry Q10 keyboards. I just got one of those in the mail, ordered a little bit ago, so super excited to play with that. Glad he's making really cool things like that. And then Dan H. and obviously a group hug to everyone for the 5.0 release.
All right, thanks. Okay, guys lurking, and next up is Higher Effect.
Just mostly group hugs this week to everyone who participated in 5.0, to everyone at Adafruit for keeping us all up to date with the COVID status and providing nice quick updates on that. And just group hug to everybody. Stay safe.
All right. Thank you. Next up is Jeff.
Hi, everybody. You know, there are a lot of adults who have to make tough decisions right now. So thanks to Adafruit, thanks to Phil for their openness as they make decisions about COVID-19, and hug reports to everybody at the open source hardware. They also had some tough decisions to make about the show. And yeah, I wouldn't have wanted to be the one who had to make that call, because it feels like you're taking away fun from people, but really you're making the good decisions you have to for people's safety. But more fun stuff. Thanks to Anne and Lady Ada for helping me with my first published guide. And thank you for Zoltan with patience with our PR process. And his continued work on ULab. Thanks to Scott for starting on that low power mode on the NRF. I know I owe you my review. That'll be coming up. And thanks to, I think it's Paint Your Dragon here on Discord for preliminary work on this thing called Adafruit Protomatter. It is an LED matrix library, and we're also going to try to incorporate it in CircuitPython.
All right. Excellent. Next up is Jerry.
Yeah, hello. Thanks to Maker Melissa for the really nice guide on the web Bluetooth with the Chromebook. Really on Chrome, it was really fun to play those demos. And similarly to Jeff for the Microlab guide and the implementation of Microlab. But the demos are really slick, so lots of fun. Thanks.
Excellent. All right, and that is Hug Reports. Thank you everyone for participating. And next up, I am going to hand it over to Jeff for status updates.
Thank you, Kattni. So this is also conducted in a round robin in a similar fashion to Hug Reports. I'll start with myself, go down the list, then back to the top until we get everybody. And hopefully I've got all the names in the document this time and I won't miss somebody. So last week, the ULab pull request was merged, so thanks. This was a team effort, and I'm just really thrilled about it. And also, the ULab guide is published, and that's my first guide on the Learn system. Really excited about that. This week, I have already picked up the old string format PR and modernized that, and maybe we have another chance to get that into 5.1. I also intend to enable ULab on STM32 and make sure that works. Give Scott his review on the PR. Continue working on this LED panel driver. I haven't written any CircuitPython yet, but I've got the hardware up and going and the Arduino software going, so I have something that I know works hardware-wise, and now just working on CircuitPython. And there's kind of a big blank here because when I wrote this, I assumed I'd be in New York for the second half of this week, but I'm not, so I'll get to do more CircuitPython stuff. And in my ongoing fun projects, a long time ago, I mentioned these laser-etched glass displays that I was working on. Finally did the 3D printed enclosure, a little CircuitPython software, so it's a gizmo. You can put it on the shelf, and it is going to blink out the prime numbers one digit at a time. So that's been a lot of fun. And with that, I'll hand it off to you, Jerry.
All right, thanks. So lots of little things last week. There's been a long-standing bug in the RFM69 library that the RSSI value was wrong, and instead of been nagging for a long time, finally somebody raised it this week, and a user, and finally it was a trivial thing to fix, but it's fixed. So it's nice to get a push to do that. And then I was playing with the Teensy 4, and I don't know how many people have used it with stuff, but this is the first time I tried SPI on it. So I've been using it with for my RFM69 testing, and it's been working great. In fact, with its speed, it actually makes up for some of the other problems. And Oh yeah, there's a little bug turned up. Somebody reported it in the SHT31D humidity calculation. There's a typo in a number that was causing a very small error, but it needed to be fixed. That was an easy fix. And then if I was playing around and somehow I didn't realize that the NRF24 LO1 library, which is in the community library, is also out in PyPy. I just never looked for it there, and it works great on the Raspberry Pi. So it's just nice to be able to expand using those little really inexpensive radios on the Raspberry Pi as well. So anyone hasn't tried those, go ahead and do it. The rest of my time is just slogging through this RFM69 stuff I've been working on to add the reliable data mode. My plan is I decided to release what I've got because it's all working, it's implemented, and I think properly, but it's not perfect. There are just inherent problems in not having interrupts enabled and things like that I just don't think we're going to be able to get around. So it won't be reliable, but it's more reliable, and at least it lets you know when a packet doesn't get through. So I think it's time to put it out there, let people play with it, decide if it's useful or not, and then see where it goes. If there's more discussion to have on it, we can do that in the weeds, but I think that's a good approach, is just get it out there now. And then next week, as I want to get the PR in for that, I just want to finish off making sure that I haven't broken anything else. And that I think it does not break anything of the existing examples, but it does add a bunch of new features. So try and get that going, and then once we get the RFM69 done, it'll be a fairly quick thing to bring the RFM9X up to the same level. And then the long term is it really needs a substantial revision to handle to put a FIFO, I believe, in the C code, as we've talked about a little bit. But I think it's worth getting it out there now and then moving on to that later. So that's my plan.
Thanks, Jerry. We're here when you want to talk about the core changes to support the hardware, because, yeah, I think you're right about not being able to fully fix it. Kattni, what do you have?
All right. So last week, I published the guide for the clue badge example. That was an update to PyBadger that allows for displaying lines of text over a highly customizable background. There were simple badge capabilities in PyBadger previously. This is much more highly customizable. So it involves a little more work, but you can show everything you want to show. And the clue example does not work on PyBadge or PyGamer. That is because the displays are different. So if you want to do that on clue, go for it. There is an example in the PyBadger repo that works on PyGamer and PyBadge if you are interested in using it on either of those. I started work on the Feather Sense guide. We just released the Feather NR52840 Sense, and we need a guide for it. So that's what I started. I spent a lot of time last week guiding the Pylint Black upgrade and implementation. There's a lot of work going into that, and so that's been pretty involved. We're starting with less used libraries and working our way towards ones that are much more commonly used, just because it's a smarter way to do it. And it sort of turned into a bit of Library Week versus Library Monday. We had missed a few libraries getting put into the bundle, and that led to going through a lot of Adabot output and determining other things that needed to be done. So this week, Library Monday, and probably week again, because there's a lot going on. Finished the Feather Sense guide, which is a pretty involved guide, mostly because there are so many sensors. The pinouts images are complicated. Normally for a Featherboard, we don't do a ton of pinouts images. In this case, we want to highlight each one of the sensors and so on, and so there's a lot more going into this guide than some others. And then beyond that, starting PyCon 2020 prep, I was approved to do a PyCon tutorial. And so the plan is actually to do a learn guide that goes with the tutorial, and then adapt that to present in the event that PyCon happens, or make it available in the event that it doesn't. either way, the Learn Guide will be posted. But it's that's something to work on as well. In terms of everyone at PyCon was going to get or is going to get a clue. And so for ostensibly for the open spaces, we need a quick start guide and a series of examples. So I will be working on both of those as they are both handy regardless of what happens. And those will be going into both a PyCon 2020 GitHub repo and into the Clue library repo is where all of the libraries that, or all the examples that go with the Clue library will end up. And we'll link between the two. So, obviously, in terms of preparation, need to operate under the assumption that PyCon will happen. However, the best way to go about it is to operate in a way that I'm not doing anything that would otherwise be wasted if the conference is canceled. So we're trying to do things that can either be used for next year or can still be used for this year if it goes virtual or so on and so forth. So just changing up the approach basically, but still starting preparation. And that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Kattni. KJW is noted as lurking, so I will hand it off to Maker Melissa. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Let's see here. Last week I worked on finishing up the web Bluetooth dashboard, and after that I published a guide for that, and then I updated the Raspberry Pi installer script that fixes the capacitive touch TFT rotation on Buster. And I did a small HT16K33 library revision. This week I'm going to catch up on some of the GitHub issues and PRs. I'm going to update CircuitPython.org with any new boards because I think there's a couple of them. And I need to update the web Bluetooth dashboard style a little bit. I'm sure there's going to be other things that come up as the week goes on. And that's it.
Thanks, Melissa. I'm going to assume that I should read Marius's notes. No, okay. I hear you now. Well, go ahead.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you. Hello to everybody. So next week, yes, it was my first really big PR for the Turtle library. So if anybody want to test it, I will be happy to debug it if needed. And I also published Fractal Little Lib with only one first example, but it will be enriched as the time go. It was because I had just for curiosity being to know if a microcontroller can calculate this, and it can. It's beautiful. And for this week, I want to see the Bluetooth a little closer, but I don't have plans. And thank you all.
Thank you. It's nice to hear from you, and we look forward to more contributions and fun stuff like fractals. All right. Mr. Certainly and SDW are lurking, so it's time for you.
Jeff, your audio cut out.
Okay. Sedacious is text only. So I was reading his notes like for 2 minutes already, but I'll go back to the start. He's working on the ICM 948 CircuitPython libraries. Arduino is mostly done, and CircuitPython is getting close. They are both refactored versions of the ICM 20649 library and will be renamed to ICM 20X. He's off Thursday and Friday for a birthday staycation. And his hug report. His hug reports ended up here somehow, it says. So, hug reports from Sedacious, Radomir for code review and Python advice, C. Grover for more circuit analysis and component selection advice, and OSHWA and Adafruit for providing guidance and support in making wise travel choices. That brings us to Summersoft, who is also text only. Last week, libraries. He patched GitHub's actions build.yml files to move pip installs of Pylint, Black, and Sphinx plus theme back to each repo from the centralized actions CI script. Patched Pylint RC to add bad continuation in preparation for Black code formatting. And tried to patch the code of conduct.md files, but apparently there's been a lot of drift and 3 separate Git patch files couldn't reach 100% coverage. For Rosy Pi and PhysicCI, he has HTTP signature authentication working now and made the first successful request from PhysicCI on Azure to a Rosy Pi node on his home network. This week, he plans to finish up the skipped Pylint RC patches, which is about 8 PRs, work on a script to update all of the code of conducts by copying in the new version regardless of the current version. Further research about Adabot using Boto 3 for core metrics in AWS. I think that means the CircuitPython download stats. And look into Blinka contributors not being included in the overall stats in Adabot Daily Report. And apologizes, I totally forgot about this last week. And that brings us to you, Scott.
Hello, thank you, Jeff. First and foremost, last week I fixed up the radio library. Thanks for Carter for pointing that out. I think there was some discussion about us renaming it to Adafruit BLE Radio, perhaps. And so we need to look at that. I don't know the status because I haven't caught up on email yet. But that's something to get on folks' radar. And thanks to Foamy Guy for the reminder that I did the radio work. I kind of blanked on that. Most of what I spent last week on was getting sleep working in the NRF 52840, basically moving timekeeping from the SysTick, which is a clock that is clocked with the CPU, and move that to the RTC, which is a much lower power, slower clock, which means that we can also turn the CPU off while we're not using it. It saves a lot of power. So I have one Feather NRF 52840 Express that's just broadcasting every 30 or 60 seconds its own internal temperature. And I ran a test over the weekend where it was taking about 10 hours for a 105 milliamp hour battery to drain, and now it's over 2 days. So I think it's about a 4x-ish improvement for that board specifically. But that board also has a NeoPixel, and the NeoPixel actually has a little like controller in it that takes power as well. So I want to redo the test with a Circuit Playground Bluefruit. The new revision of it, Lamore actually added the ability to turn all the cut the power to all the NeoPixels stuff. So I want to rerun the test between 5.0 and my build just to see kind of what improvement we get on the power side on the Circuit Playground Bluefruit is. Let's see, what else do I have in my notes? I haven't fixed any of the other ports. I've only been doing the NRF 52840, but we now have STM and we have IMX and we have Atmel SAMD as well. So I need to take a look at those and fix things that have been broken there and like do the same clock thing as well. This PR that will be kind of large, but it'll be really foundational for us improving the power consumption of CircuitPython, which is exciting. Because of the way that sleep now works, it has a lot of potential to break things. Probably audio playback is one, and definitely pulse in is another. So this is something I'd like us to merge after we're kind of like through getting ULab out and anything else, because it's likely we'll have to follow up with other stuff. Yeah, the general gist is that when you call time.sleep, the CPU actually stops, and the CPU only starts up again if you get an interrupt. And so we need to make sure that lots of stuff is interrupt driven then, and we'll wake things up, and then background stuff can run. So that's where sleep's at. I'll definitely do SAMD this week as well. I'll try to get all the ports going. Expect to, when it gets merged, to have some instability come in, so people should let us know and experiment with like sleeping in different spots and stuff in their code. But generally, you will see an improvement in power consumption. One random thing is I was looking at some library sizing last week, and I think it'd be really cool if somebody created a CI test that basically just logged the memory footprint of importing different modules. That would be really nice as a way for us to just track the size of things over time. So if that sounds good to anybody, let me know. And then lastly, I want to talk about COVID-19 a little bit. If you've probably heard that in Washington State, it's kind of the earliest and largest outbreak, or at least it was, in the U.S. And basically, not traveling anywhere, not sick at all. Don't know anybody who's been specifically sick, but we're trying to hang out at home. My choir just had like rehearsals and concert canceled and stuff, so we're really just hanging near home. My wife's working from home as well. And what I wanted to remind folks is that like a lot of people, I think, are going to be in their house a lot more than they're normal. This is something that those of us who are paid by Adafruit kind of have dealt with already in terms of just being home a lot. But if you're one of the folks that are in an area where they're asking you to stay kind of at home and not go to work, if you need somebody to chat with or want to play games or anything, let me know. It's the cabin fever is real, regardless of whether you actually get COVID-19 or not. So I think working remotely and meeting up online is something that we excel at already, but for some folks, it's going to be new and more important. So I'm thinking about streaming later this week, maybe in conjunction with the Open Hardware Summit, but that's one way we can feel a bit more communal. I'm either thinking about doing some CircuitPython sleeping stuff or the Tiny Logic Friend, which has been backburnered, but I want to get back to. Basically making any Adafruit board, any tiny USB board, a inexpensive, not very capable logic analyzer. And then if you just need to chat privately, I'm also happy to do voice chats with folks as well. And lastly, if you want to play video games, because choir got canceled, I'm going to have some more time for that as well. So if there are games you want to play and you want to hang out and do stuff like that because you're stranded at home or not, let me know. And I hope everybody stays healthy and sane at the same time.
Thanks, Scott. I could sure use some hanging out, so maybe we'll find a time.
Cool. Sounds good to me.
Just asking Zoltan if they have any status updates to give. Just go ahead and unmute if you want to say hi, or we will continue on to Andrew. Your call.
I think you should continue with Andrew.
All right. Well, thank you. It's good to see you. Good you're making progress on things. We'll keep an eye on it.
Okay.
All right, Andrew. Or were you lurking? Let me scroll back up to the top of the notes here. No, doesn't say you're lurking. So, okay.
Yep. So this week I spent a brief amount of time researching I2S audio in response to a question from @SpikyBoy, specifically using the SPH0645 as an input device. Seems like there isn't really a whole lot of documented support for I2S input, quite as much as there is for I2S output. I don't know if that's something that is possible or could be made possible. But spend a little bit of time looking into kind of what it was, how it works, how the underlying technology works, etc.
Yeah, on the NRF, I know there is a peripheral for it, but we have not coded the support in CircuitPython, and I'm not sure about the other platforms.
Yeah, that's kind of what I saw, and then I also noticed a couple forums that were posting specifically with that microphone that it's a 32-bit microphone, which the NRF doesn't seem to support without using some kind of questionable workarounds. So ended up just looking into that for a little bit and then kind of put it on the back burner to go back to working on the AS3935 lightning sensor using a Switchdock Labs AS3935 Thunderboard. is the name of it, which I will post a link to in the chat here in a little bit. And then just continued Discord community support whenever possible in between those and between work. And then this week, sounds like Kattni has a few ideas for assistance with PyCon preparation, continued testing of that library I just mentioned, the AS3935 library, and then possibly begin playing around with my Cricut for microbit using my clue, just testing a couple different things and a couple different ideas I want to play around with there, and then continued Discord community support as well, as always. And I'll turn it back to you.
Oh, okay. I keep doing that. I'll have to learn not to. We've got several lurkers, and then we've got Dan.
Okay, so as mentioned, I released 5.0.0 stable last Monday after the meeting in the evening, and it seems to be we haven't had anything that we immediately had to release at 5.01. That's good. After that, I did some cleanup. We've been storing all the release assets on the GitHub release pages, and they were enormous, and they made the release pages load really slowly, and they were incomplete anyway. So since they're available on Amazon S3 through, hold on a second, I've got too many things going on here. I've got, anyway, I cleaned that up because they're on S3. And right now I'm working on debugging a really hard problem in the SAMD51 UF2 bootloader, which very occasionally when you power cycle the board, it will write zeros into some area of flash. This is really obscure and it's hard to reproduce. Have to get the minimal thing that will reproduce it and then figure out what's going on. And the other thing that I'm working on, as I think I mentioned partly last week, is some Bluetooth barbecue thermometers. I have to figure out, reverse engineer those so we can write a service for those. And we also decided to write in CircuitPython a description of the Adafruit BLE service, which is used right now in Arduino for the BLE Circuit Playground app, which just sort of lets you control simple things on a Circuit Playground Bluefruit and eventually on a clue. And we'll eventually make that available in CircuitPython so you can do the same kinds of things. Okay.
Thanks, Dan. Dave P. is lurking, and I have notes from David Glaude, who is missing the meeting. And that's partly on us because we didn't put out a note about the American time zone change. And sorry for all of the other international types who were inconvenienced by that. Anyway, his notes say this week, improve Foamy Guy's BLE patchwork, display speed up using scale, auto scale, a gizmo version, color sensing, and a great chat on the best feature set. Checking out the FOSDEM video that was finally released. So he's got a couple of links there in the document. And David made a presentation about CircuitPython at FOSDEM, so I assume that that's what that's about. And next week, he plans to put his clue into the PySupply Bitbuggy car, which hopefully we'll get a video of that, like running around and scaring cat or something. That would be fun. Drew, I think that you are next.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
Hi. Yes.
Hi. Yes. Geez. Had the speaker on. Yeah, so we wrapped up the manufacturing of the Open Hardware Summit badge, the wrist badge that runs CircuitPython, and we were gearing up to start writing some apps for it, which we still will be doing, except it'll be a while before people get their wrist badges to play along with. Yeah, so Sedacious has been helping with that, and Michael Welling and Alex Camilo have been helping to write some apps. We have like a basic clock app working, and we're thinking about what we can do with BLE.
Do you have any idea on what time scale people might get those badges who are planning to attend?
Yesterday we decided that it was going to be virtual, and we're going to ship out the goodie bags to people that people that had tickets that aren't attending. Well, no one can attend because it's virtual. But I don't know exactly how long that'll take. Everything's in New York right now, so we'll have to sort through it and bag them up. And SparkFun also offered to help ship things, so I think that's still kind of like to be determined, but hopefully it won't be too long.
All right.
Though, yeah.
Thanks for the update.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. I'm just so bummed.
Yeah. We'll have more information, I'm sure, by the next CircuitPython meeting. Yeah, there was I think there was like 225 badges that we got manufactured and tested okay. So everyone should be able to get one that had bought a ticket. So yeah, it'll just be a little bit of a delayed gratification on that one.
All right, thanks. Dew Wester is lurking, so Foamy Guy.
Right. So last week, I did a bunch of work on the BLE patchwork demo. Again, also I'll go ahead and say thanks again to Dave Glaude on his help with that. And then I'm hoping to get that cleaned up a little bit and get a PR put in tonight for the Adafruit repo. And then a couple other PRs I worked on throughout the week. One for the thermal printer. That was previously unsupported on the smallest of the devices, the Trinket M0 and the Gemma. And a GitHub user came along and figured out a way to make that work. I got that tested out over the weekend. And then Ethernet Featherwing. I know there's been a lot of work on the WizNet library. I did some testing on some of those PRs as well. And then the last one was for the debouncer library. There was an old PR that was adding touch.io support, which is really cool. But Jeff had actually, which I probably should have given a hug report to Jeff, but he had actually recommended a better way to do that than actually importing touch.io, and that worked perfectly, and also taught me something new about Python. So big thanks to Jeff for that. And then I did also nail down an issue on the NeoPixels with the Cricket and Seesaw relating to brightness. I just need to get an actual issue created with my contained code. And then for next week, I picked up a couple goodies over the weekend, RTC breakout and IR temperature sensor. Haven't ever played with either of those before, so got to get those built, figure out how they work and all that fun stuff. And then like David had mentioned, he created the Gizmo version, the Circuit Playground Bluefruit with the Gizmo version of the patchwork demo. But we've made some improvements since then, so I got to get those moved in. And then lastly is get back to work on the game, the PyGamer Creating Your First Game guide. And that's it for me this week.
Oh, there, I'm muted again. Thank you. On to you, Hierophect.
Hello.
Hello.
So this past week, I continued to work on Pulse-In for IR support on the STM32. So working on getting a proper control setup working to make sure that my tests are working properly, and adding external interrupts to the STM32 system, which can sometimes be a pain in the butt because STM32 is kind of weird about interrupts. So it's always fun having to read the data sheets around that stuff. I've also been doing a bunch more H7 and F7 research. So those are for those who don't know the STM32 ecosystem, those are the highest end boards that are offered by STM32 without moving to a new processor type. Some of them are very powerful, moving up to 400 megahertz with really huge profiles, tons of peripherals, things like camera drivers and LCD drivers and kind of advanced audio drivers and all that kind of stuff. We're looking at porting them to CircuitPython. So I've been working on the pin and register differences that we need to implement into the structure of CircuitPython to support that, and figuring out how much work is required for the new features. I'm personally very excited for a board called the Open Machine Vision Project, OpenMV, which is a camera module with a mounted STM32H7 board on it, and I do a lot of machine vision stuff in my own time. So I'm hoping that we can eventually add a camera or a machine vision module of some kind into CircuitPython and start doing really cool stuff with that. This week it's going to be mostly more of the same, wrapping up Pulse in and getting into Rotary IO, which is the other module we wanted to wrap up before moving completely over to the F7 and H7 support. I'm going to keep working on the H7 and F7 stuff in tandem, just because sometimes I get tired of reading the really long timer data sheets, and it's more fun to kind of look at structural stuff. So I try to trade between the two. And I guess, this isn't really so much related to CircuitPython, but I've also been working with the Zephyr RTOS people on improving some of their board import documentation. So that's been kind of a fun, interesting side project, making the board import docs a little bit more approachable, and I may be working with them more to support more CircuitPython style boards with Zephyr. In the short term, I may also be moving my base operations out of Boston into the boonies for a little bit, depending on what happens with COVID here in the city. We don't have quite as many cases here as some other of the big cities in the U.S., but still, a little bit up in the air. So we'll see if that has to happen. In which case, I'll have to look pick up and move my lab. So, but to everybody else out there, stay safe. Keep in mind that washing your hands is a lot better than Purell, especially since Purell is sold out everywhere. And I hope everything in this kind of tech ecosystem of ours can get back to the normal, fun state as soon as possible. So stay safe until then. That's it for me.
Thanks. And yeah, stay safe times 100. That brings us to the end of status updates, and I'm going to hand it back to Kattni to run In the Weeds.
All right. Thanks, Jeff.
You're welcome.
So, the last section of this meeting, we lovingly call In the Weeds. It is an opportunity for more long-form discussions, things that either come out of status updates or just that people want to talk about. I'm going to swap the order real quick because the second thing is very fast. We did talk about renaming it. It just needs to happen. That's for the Adafruit BLE radio rename to the Adafruit from Adafruit radio. So that I put it on my list. I'll do it. It just needed to happen. That was where that was at.
You answered my question of who's going to do it. So
yes,
that's all I need to know.
Okay. Sounds good. It's on my list.
Thank you.
We'll get it taken care of. So then let's flip back to hand it over to Scott to talk about his In the Weeds topic.
Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about 5.1.0 release plan. This is basically because I think with the sleep stuff, I'm going to make everything unstable, and I'd love to see a stable release of Microlab before that. So I want to ask both Zoltan and Jeff, just like, how are you feeling about it? I think there are some ports that don't have it on that we'll probably want to turn on as well. But what do we think in terms of how close we are and things like that?
I feel really good about it. I didn't run into anything weird or unexplained while working on the guide, except for one thing that turned out to be my own bug when I turned some code into using ULab that wasn't using it before.
Okay.
So I feel really good about the functionality we have. As noted, it's only turned on in 2 of the ports. We need to turn it on in the other 2, or move the turn on point to somewhere else, like make it CircuitPy full build or something.
Right.
Somebody else said they tested it on Teensy4. I'm going to test it today on the STM32 Feather.
Right.
And if so, I can just commit both of those today and get it pull requested.
Okay. I mean, that sounds good to me. Do you have any IMX boards there? If not,
I do not.
You should get some.
All right. We'll talk a little later and figure out what I can order.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, TC4 is a good one, and then the dev kits are pretty good too.
Okay, so Scott, I think the most important question is whether you want to hold off till the internals are sort of sorted out, or you say that you don't care as long as the API or the Python facing interface doesn't change. You don't care how it's implemented internally. So I think that's something that you have to decide, or CircuitPython has to decide. I can't comment on that. I can only say, or I can only tell what I am doing now and what the approximate time frame for that might be.
Right.
But on the other hand, it's really your decision. So
yeah, I mean, I if the APIs are staying the same, I think it's fine.
well, we have agreed that we that we try to adhere to NumPy. So
Right.
I think that pretty much pins it down.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there are a couple of smaller issues. Perhaps we have discussed this earlier, that we should factor out all functions that are not NumPy conform,
right,
into a separate module. That's trivial. The question is whether you want to add extra functions there that are useful for a microcontroller but irrelevant for NumPy.
Right.
So one example could be Jeff and Dan Harbert started to float this idea yesterday afternoon, I think, that the FFT routine could be sped up.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we want to do that, so I basically it depends on whether we calculate the twiddle factors beforehand, but then it's no longer compatible with NumPy. So if you want to speed up FFT, I think that's doable, but then it has to be a separate extra function, which is also okay. I have nothing against that, but the question is whether you want to wait for those functions.
I think in terms of if there's things that are going to move modules, it would be nice to do those first. Because then they won't.
Okay, so I think that's not going to change anything in the core, or let's put it this way. If we have something called extra module or whatever it is, I don't care. So you can keep the dirty stuff there, and the NumPy stuff in all other modules.
Right.
And if it's separated, then it doesn't matter anymore.
Right.
So my suggestion about the FFT, it wasn't really a suggestion. It was just like, I don't know anything about this. Is it worth looking at? So I don't have a strong viewpoint about it. And if you could leave it out for now. Yeah.
Well, I think it's an interesting point, and I would definitely like to explore that. But as I said, if we do that, then FFT is not going to be NumPy compatible anymore. So what we should do in that case is that we keep the FFT as it is, and we implement a fast FFT, which is ridiculous because it's already fast. But anyway, we implement this in the extras module, in which case it will be called, I don't know, fast FFT or whatever. I don't care, and it doesn't have to conform to NumPy.
Right. Yeah, I think adding something to extras is fine. Like, I don't want us to think that this is the only time we'll update ULab. I just want to, like, generally we should try not to move things later.
I agree with that. Yeah.
The other thing that we could make sure is that can we actually do microlab.dunder versions? Like, we should make sure that's in there as well.
I'm pretty sure it is.
No, that's already there.
Okay, perfect. You're ahead of me then. That's even better. Because that way we can make an argument for not tying CircuitPython versioning to ULab API changes. If we basically say like the ULab version is a separate version number still, and here's how you get it with Dunder version.
Okay. Yeah, well, I don't care really. So
right.
if that's the way for you, then we should do it that way.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a good policy in general.
And specifically with FFT and Spectrum, that's one where we differ significantly from NumPy's way of working with things, and I think we can just leave that at ulab.fft rather than move it. But that would depends what Scott thinks too.
Do you mean the complex numbers or something else?
Right. So the way FFT has to handle complex numbers is different, and then the fact that Spectrum doesn't even exist.
Right. Although something like that exists in SciPy.
Mm-hmm.
So SciPy.signal. I think there's something called spectrogram or spectro. I think it's spectrogram, and that's basically the spectrum function. So we can rename it. I don't have anything against that. And as far as complexes are concerned, I think it's a tricky issue because some of the hardware platforms don't implement complexes.
Mm-hmm.
So then if you insist on implementing complexes, then you are not compatible with the hardware, or not with all pieces of hardware, and that might also be an issue. I don't know.
Is there any popular hardware that doesn't have complexes?
I don't know. I seen this comment on in one of the pull requests for MicroPython. I might be able to find it quickly.
Yeah, I mean, my gut feeling is that like those platforms are just not going to be ones that we support Microlab on.
Okay.
Is what my gut is like we're moving to a world where they're like we're definitely moving up the speed chain. We're not moving down. So I would expect generally new chips to have stuff. Although I don't know ESP32S2 is worth looking at because we're definitely going to support that in the future.
ESP32 should be quite capable, shouldn't it?
Well, the S2 I think is actually not quite as good as the
Okay.
32.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. They added USB to it.
Okay.
Which is why we're interested. Okay, so I think so before 5.1, we already have Dunder version. Jeff's gonna look at turning on the other two ports. And do we have functions we need to move before we do 5.1?
I think I would then move Spectrum or whatever we call it. I don't mind. I can move that. That's a trivial issue.
Yep.
Beyond that, I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great. And
the question is whether you want to have extra functions, extra in the sense that are not implemented yet, but should be there. For example, concatenate or split or I don't know, whatever you have in mind.
I think we can add those later.
Okay.
My concern is just releasing something that's going to be moved later.
I think I wouldn't move anything now.
You would move Spectrum, right?
Yeah, we move Spectrum, definitely.
Yeah,
but
that's the only one.
Right.
Okay, so that gets moved. We start the extra module. It would be nice to have a tagged release so that when we say like CircuitPython 5.1 has ULab or Microlab blah, like whatever version it is, just to communicate it well.
Okay.
But then like from then on, we can just, as you do releases of Microlab, we can just update.
Okay.
And get those
Sounds
in.
good.
Well,
yes.
that maybe brings up one final item. When we started this, we created in the Adafruit space on GitHub the CircuitPython ULab. Should we deprecate that and point ourselves right at MicroPython ULab?
The only diff we're carrying is a README, right?
That is right. That's the situation today.
Right. Actually, I just wanted to point out, Jeff, that's really great. I have read the tutorial or whatever you would call it. I think it's really great, informative and instructive. So good job.
Thank you.
Awesome. I think it's fine to point to upstream. Like, we have no reason to have our own because Zoltan's doing a great job working with us.
Okay. I guess someone at Adafruit can depublish or remove that fork, and
we could just archive it. Yeah.
Archive it. Yeah. And so, can you also pull request the change to our Git modules then?
Sure, I could do that.
Okay.
Or you could do it.
Okay. One question perhaps I would wanted to raise. Do you have a place where people can voice their wishes, concerns, and so on and so forth? And the question is really about functions that people would need, but I haven't thought of.
I mean, I think the issues list for Microlab is the appropriate place for that.
Okay.
If people happen to file those issues on CircuitPython, that's totally cool. Like, we can get you in the loop and get it moved over.
No, actually, I think that my question was a bit different.
Okay.
So I wanted you to sort of advertise this issue that I mean, in the CircuitPython community, that people should come forward, because a couple of times I had this experience that people just expected what's out there and didn't ask for something that was actually quite trivial to implement.
Right.
And I think it would be a shame. So if a function is missing, then we have to take care of that. And yeah, so if you can give some publicity to this question. Okay, great.
Yeah, so let's plan on just looping you in on the release notes. Because the release notes is what, like, Phil will crib off for the shows on Wednesday and the newsletter. Like, the release notes is kind of like the press release. So if we make sure and say, like, the big thing about 5.1 is Microlab, and if you are a NumPy user and find something missing, go here to let us know that you'd like it for X reason.
Okay.
Sounds good. And then if we do it there, we'll be able to, like, try and keep that message as part of the whole release.
Okay.
And we can even, like, leave it as a permanent kind of fixture in our release notes too.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. Sounds like we're good to go on that. Jeff, I have an answer to your final question. There's a long-standing bug in Pylint where it fails on PEP 8 compliant continuations involving keyword arguments. So the connection between Pylint continuations and Black is that Black formats it to that PEP 8 compliant continuation, and Pylint fails even though it's valid. So we are disabling Pylint continuation because Black handles it anyway.
Okay, and that is old versions of Pylint only, or including the up-to-date versions?
Up-to-date version,
Pylint?
It's been an issue for 5 years or so, and hasn't been resolved. It's a whole ordeal, apparently, according to the internet.
All right.
So we are just
taking
it
so this
for
is
what
how
it
you
is.
split that baby. All right. Got
So-
it. Thank you.
I think I have a little bit of background about this as well, because this is one of the more jarring things that Black does. To me, when I read Black code, is that if your line of parameters in a function is longer than the line limit, it will put every parameter on a single line. And that seems really weird to me, but I think the reason that they did it is actually because Facebook, who created Black, they're in a world where they're moving to the static typing stuff that, or the type hinting stuff that Python 3, 6, or 7 has. And I think what happens is that as you start, you're not only putting a variable name, but you're also putting the type, and you basically gets really long really fast. So that's why the policy is basically like, oh, once you're past this line limit, like you must be putting type hints and stuff. So we'll just put it all in one line, because like the reality is that you're going to have to wrap, there's enough information per parameter that like you can only fit it on one line anyway. And then the other nice thing about that is that when you do diffs, when you add things, you don't have to worry about like diffs within a single line then.
Right. That's the argument that I actually can agree with, because I love it when diffs aren't moving around 3 words in the middle of a line and then it all rewraps and that kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah, so I think for me, it's one of the weirder things that Black does, but there's a reason for it. And I think once we're all used to it, we'll be used to it.
All right. Thanks for that.
Okay.
Cool.
And with that, it is time to wrap up. This has been the CircuitPython Weekly for March 9th. Yes, March 9th, 2020. For future meetings for the next however many months, be aware that the Eastern, or that general time in the US is now daylight saving time. So we're off by an hour. So be aware of that, so you know when to come to the meeting if you are in a state or country that does not do that. You are lucky, but also probably an hour off from where we are right now. So be aware of that. We will continue to update the notes documents a week early, so that you have plenty of time to get in there, and also can stay on top of when we're having the meetings in case we're moving them. We have no intention of moving. Next week, I believe, is still happening at the same time. And other than that, I want to thank everybody for participating. If you are listening to this remotely and you want to come chat with us, come join us on the Adafruit Discord server at adafru.it/discord. And we will talk to everybody next week. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Kattni.